Okay, you guys, it's 10:02, and now that I did the recording, okay, we're good to go. Rachel and I have been talking, and we would like it if you would unmute. We have a smaller group today, and as Rachel's talking, we'll have time to ask questions. But if something pops up that she mentions, or you want to know a little bit more about, she'd love for you to just ask your question. I'm gonna just do a little intro right now of her. And first I have to just tell you a funny story. So this morning we hear a loud noise outside the office. And so we look out the window and there's this huge truck with roofing materials. And I'm thinking, oh great. Really? We're on the second floor. And but anyway, they dropped their stuff and they've gone now, but we're not even sure if it's for our building or for the building next door. So we're good we shouldn't hear any loud hammering or people walking. So just keep that in mind though if you do. I don't know. Okay, so I'm very, very glad that Rachel is here with us. Rachel Gladstone, the author of The Weekend Wedding Assistant, which is a romantic comedy about death and second chances. And Rachel started her career as a bohemian backpacker who hiked across Europe and ended up singing backup for Arlo Guthrie and David Bromberg, eventually brought her musical and songwriting talents to Nashville. She wrote songs with leading artists such as Rosie Flores and landed her own acclaimed all-booked-up book review column for the international online magazine dishmag.com. Her previous writings have appeared in Nashville Scene, Nashville Lifestyle Magazine Ourselves, and Foundation. So Rachel's going to share with us the twists and turns in her life that culminated in her writing a novel. She'll discuss how the characters popped into her head and her writing and editing process. She'll also share a reading, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end. So one thing I really thought we could start with is this bohemian backpacker persona. And if you want to start your chat about that, we'd love to hear all about it.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm so glad you could be with us. I'm just honored. So yes, I still am a bohemian, although I don't backpack any longer. But I started out my journey studying opera at Eastman School of Music. After 2 years of that, I realized I did not fit into the opera scene. So my girlfriend and I, my best friend of forever, backpacked through Europe for a year. And I settled in Amsterdam for about 9 months, played music every night in little cafes to make my living, and lived with a really crazy Dutch woman who had a room in her apartment that I could rent for $30 a month, and got to know a bunch of other expats. And it was a very educational and entertaining time. And then I came back to the States, moved to California, pursued my musical career, and started touring with David Bromberg and Arlo Guthrie, and then came to Nashville and added John Prine to that list of has-been folkies, as I love to call them. And then Nashville became my home. Little by little, I was getting older, and to get a recording contract, you had to be about 14. And as you can see, I'm not 14. So I started writing. I fell into getting this job at this magazine, Dish Magazine. I met the publisher one night at a #1 party on Music Row. And I said, oh, I've got a great idea for a column. And she hated the idea. But she said, oh, but I need a book reviewer. And I said, well, I've never done that. And she said, oh, well, you'd be great at it. Let's do it. I said, okay. So I wrote for her for the magazine for 11 years. And I started really learning a lot about writing prose. And I loved reading novels at that point anyway. But I got really good because I was reading 10 books a month. It had to be fast because I reviewed 4 books a month. And so I read and read and read, and I really learned what it was to write a novel. As I was telling Kate, I don't have a degree in English. I've never been to Iowa. And it makes me sometimes I've felt a little less than because all my writer friends are very educated and all that, but I basically taught myself to write novels. I'm also a storyteller. I love to perform out. You can tell how shy I am just by here seeing me here. And I'm an essayist as well. I was in the process of getting divorced, and I started to write this blog called the Petty Chronicles about my ex-husband, because it was the only way I could process what was going on in my life. And that got published, and that became a weekly series. And then I did a novel based on that, which didn't go anywhere, but that's going to come out next. And then The Weekend Wedding Assistant happened, and I was very lucky to get a publisher, and here we are. I guess that's sort of my synopsis.
So your first book really was not the first book. Like, this is my
second novel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's your second? Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. What's your second book about?
That's about the funny side of divorce, and it's called The Future Former Mrs. Him. And so that'll be coming out at some point. I'm still in the editing process of that. I wrote it 7 years ago, and then wrote this and went back to the other one, and it was frightening. I must be honest with you. It's been a lot of rewriting going on. So, but I've had so much fun with The Weekend Wedding Assistant. The characters just, you know, are so wonderful. They became such a part of my life, and they become your friends, you know, as you write them.
So during the pandemic, so I met you at PLA last February.
Right.
And if you guys have not been to PLA, it was my first time to PLA, and it was in Nashville, which was great. And I got to see Music Row and all that. That was awesome. It rained, but that's okay. There's just there were a lot of different things going on there. It was a great conference, got to meet a lot of different authors, and then COVID happened. And you were just starting to promote your book.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was released February 13th. And my book release party was at a bookstore called Parnassus, which is basically the only brick and mortar store left in Nashville, unfortunately. And I'm sure you all have experienced that in your towns too, that bookstores have disappeared. And I sold out. They were out the door. It was like 110 people. And so this was a good foreboding for the book. I was like, oh, great, we're going to do well. Then the PLA. And then I had an entire book tour set up all over the country. And 2 weeks later, that just canceled. So I've been doing a lot of Zoom meetings like this, and trying to get it out there as much as I can. You know, it was definitely not a great time to release a book.
But I also, how were you with technology? Now that you're having to do this, how are you with technology before this? Would you ever consider doing something like this? Or?
No, it just never would have occurred to me, really. You know, I mean, mostly you would just go, I was just going to travel and go to all these cities. I had about 20 cities I was going to. And I love to be with people. I love that one-on-one thing. You know, ever the shy one, as I call myself. So I was disappointed. And I was going to do some live things through bookstores, and then all the bookstores closed too. So it was sort of that first few months, we just didn't know what was going to happen, and kept hoping it would only be brief, you know.
Yeah. Sad to say, here we still are, right?
I know, right? But I've actually done a lot on Instagram, I've got to say. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of bookstagrammers. And so I've gone on there and gotten reviewed on there, and that's opened up a lot of avenues for people to see it and read it and review it, and go on Goodreads. Goodreads is another place that I've had some, you know, success as far as promoting the book. And that's really been, you know, during the pandemic, I was on Instagram every morning, and I was getting people to take pictures of themselves reading the book, and they'd send it to me, and then I'd post it with some pithy caption, and get people to, read it and review it. And I'm still doing that.
So this pandemic has not been great for any of us, obviously, but I really think it has, I know for me, given me far more technology skills than I ever thought, although I fumbled around to find the recording, but I got it. But I think it's really, we've all, and I hate this term because I feel like it's overused, but we all have had to pivot. We all have had to figure out how to make this work. And especially for these guys, how do you do programming when the library's closed? And
right.
how do you engage with your patrons? I mean, they do the same thing. And a lot of these libraries are small public libraries that are the community hub, and they're closed. And that's, really been difficult. And how do you, chat about, oh my gosh, we got these great new books here this week, and yet, your staff is really the only one seeing them, unless you put them on Facebook or Instagram, which most of them have done, which,
right.
Which again, we're figuring it out as we go. But I really think that in our profession that these gals and guys have done an awful lot to continue to engage with their communities, and that's what they're there for too. So important.
Yeah. Well, I had so much fun at PLA because 100 librarians stood in line to meet me, and
I was one.
The book. I know, and it was so great. I remember shaking everybody's hand and thinking as I was doing it, should I be doing this? Oh, sure, because it was only the end of February, right? We didn't really know, and we're all still here. We're all breathing and fine. So,
right.
But I love this because it's at least the next best thing to being there.
Right.
You get to see people's faces and talk to them, and 2D's better than no D, I think.
That's right. That's right. Well, I did want to talk obviously about your book. I really enjoyed it. I love romantic comedies, and although I'm pretty much a nonfiction person, I love nonfic, but this was a great book, I thought. And for the premise of the book, why don't you tell us a little bit about the story, the Wedding Assistant?
Yeah. So I actually am a wedding planner also, just in case I don't have enough to do. And I do love that. And I've always loved weddings. And I got my start 15 years ago at this place called Scarrett Bennett, which is actually where Whitfield Chapel is based on. It's actually called Whiteman Chapel, and it is a beautiful Gothic chapel. So I looked at, there was a nameplate above the door, and it said Weekend Wedding Assistant. And I thought, God, that would make a great title for a book. And eventually, and I could just kind of stored it away. And I also, as I was doing all these weddings, I was just seeing all these really crazy stories. And every story in the book actually happened. And there's one particular story that the character, it's her first wedding. That was my first wedding. And it almost ran me off. It was a really she was bridezilla of all time. It got better from there, but I thought, oh Lord, this is going to be a scary thing to do. But anyway, then I just thought about the title for a while and mulled it over. And as happened in the first book, suddenly this character appeared in my head and started talking to me like she was a person I'd met. I could see her. I knew what she drove, where she lived, what she ate, everything about her. And then suddenly all her friends were there. And then she told me her story. Honestly, it's such an interesting process because the whole thing downloads in my head like a movie. And not always the ending, but I kind of knew where I wanted to go at the end. And then it was my job to get her to the end. So she tells me what happens, but then I have to uncover her inner life. I have to uncover her motivations and all the characters' motivations and why they do what they do and how they interact with one another and why they interact that way. And they surprise me because there'll be times when I think, oh, Julia Holmes is going to do this, and then she would do something completely different. And I'd say, wow, why did you make that decision? And she'd explain it to me, and I would kind of flesh it out. And as I wrote draft after draft after draft, those things uncovered more and more. And I'm going to read a passage today, and I do have a little backstory for that. Have you all, I don't know if everyone's read it, but I'll try not to give too much away, but the main character is engaged to the man of her dreams to be married in the chapel of her dreams 6 weeks hence. And he comes to her and tells her he wants to climb the last leg of the Appalachian Trail before they tie the knot. He's got to do this. She reluctantly lets him go, and he's on the final mountain, and he's struck by lightning and killed. So he kicks the bucket doing something on his bucket list, which is also something that I had in my back pocket for years. I just loved the idea of someone kicking the bucket, doing something on their bucket list. I thought that was hilarious. And if you're going to kill somebody, you want it to be a little funny. So I did 4 drafts of this book before I wrote a funeral scene. And I suddenly realized I hadn't written a funeral scene for this character that does emerge throughout the book in different ways. And so I realized that it took me 4 drafts to do a funeral scene for the guy I killed off in the 3rd sentence of the book. So I thought that was kind of funny. And that is the passage I'm going to read today. Would you like me to?
If you want to go, why don't you go ahead? Yeah,
all right.
Set up.
Since I just set it up, why go any farther? This is chapter 3, and I'm just going to read the first half of this. The things you say can hurt, but it's the things you don't say that might kill you, like, "Don't go, Aaron. What the hell are you thinking?" Those words bounced off the wall of my sleep-deprived brain nonstop like a kid on a sugar high. My thoughts slapped me around. Why didn't you stop him? If you'd gotten your ass out of bed and driven him to the airport, you would have had an extra 20 minutes with him. It was like having the inside of my brain wallpapered with dog shit. It had been 4 days since Aaron had died, but it might have been 400 for all I knew. Time had lost all meaning. All I could do was crawl from 1 minute to the next. But 4 days or 400, there I was, sitting in my church, wearing black, surrounded by scores of mourners, all of whom were there to bid farewell to the love of my life. It was unreal. Propped up in the front pew like a semi-conscious rag doll, I fought to banish the self-flagellating thoughts that would not shut the fuck up. The more I fought them, the louder they got. I was surprised the entire congregation couldn't hear them. I struggled to turn my attention to Reverend Hayes, who had the other mourners in the palm of his hand as he eulogized his ass off from the pulpit. But try as I might, I couldn't make sense of a single word. Had I told Aaron often enough just how much I loved him? That he meant the world to me? I'd wanted to be his wife more than anything. But instead of making our wedding about our future together and the life we would surely build, I'd fussed at him about seating charts and save the date cards like an old schoolmarm. Suddenly, all the hours I'd spent planning my perfect day looked like a foolish waste of time I'd never get back. A wave of nausea began its rise from the pit of my stomach to the base of my throat. I lowered my head, taking in a few slow, deep breaths in order to hold the wave in place. I regret every fight we had, every cross word, every slight, I thought as I stared at my shoes. We hadn't fought often, but still, the angry words I'd spat at him on more than one occasion, which had long ago been forgiven, were words that I'd never be able to take back. I cringed at the thought that time might never lessen this unwieldy burden. The days leading up to this moment had lumbered by in a fog of condolence calls and funeral arrangements, lukewarm casseroles, and spurts of unrelenting tears. I'd alternately binged on coffee and booze, with sleep running a distant third, and this left me looking ragged around the edges. This routine could also have been part of the cause for the running voices in my head. But this morning, after emptying the entire contents of my closet while trying to get dressed, I had truly lost it when I'd come to the devastating conclusion that I didn't have a thing to wear. I have nothing black, I moaned as I paced back and forth like a caged animal, clad only in a lacy black bra and matching panties. Okay, I did have something black, but it was hardly church-appropriate attire. What about this? Harper asked innocently, proffering the little black cocktail dress that was the only item left hanging in my closet. Lily visibly cringed as I began to pace a bit faster. That's the dress she was wearing the night she met Aaron. I looked so good in it, I continued to sniffle. Go ahead. Try it on, Harper urged. Nothing cowed that woman. Reluctantly, I slipped the dress off the hanger and over my head, pulling it down over my torso. It fit like a glove, a really form-fitting, sexy kind of glove. I glowered at my reflection in the mirror. This would never do, although I had to admit I'd never looked thinner. Yeah, I thought, that too sick to eat because your fiance died diet is really the way to go. I pivoted to the right and then the left, glancing over my shoulder so I could get a good look at my tightly sheathed derriere. I can't go to church dressed like this. We could go shopping, Lily suggested. I can't go shopping, I wailed, throwing myself down dramatically atop the pile of rejected outfits that covered the bed. Look at me. I could barely make it from here to the shower this morning. Besides, I hate shopping. You know that. All she needs is a jacket, Harper told Lily, as if I weren't in the room. You're right, Lily brightened, continuing the conversation as if I truly wasn't there. Sinking down on the bed beside me, she laid a consoling hand on my shoulder as I turned to face her. I have tons of black jackets. What kind of real estate agent would I be if I didn't have a closet full of jackets? She stood and headed for the door. You run and get a few for her to choose from. I'll deal with the makeup and hair. Harper yanked me to my feet as if I were one of her unruly twins. And now, here I sat, dressed to the nines in a church-appropriate jacket that hid my tightly sheathed behind, fixated on the larger-than-life photo of Aaron that stared out at me from the center of the stage. He was smiling, beaming, actually. He looked like he was keeping a secret he was dying to share, like he'd just discovered the key to happiness or something. Maybe he was smiling because he knew we'd always remember him in the prime of life while we, the ones he'd abandoned, would go on living without him. We'd get older and lose our youthful glow, while he would always remain as he was, strong, exuberant, and full of life. He would forever be young in our eyes. The joke was definitely on us, and he knew it. I thought about his parents and how lucky they were to have died before he had. Were they waiting for him on the other side? Were they all together again? Aaron was a planner, something we definitely had in common. If he'd been a Boy Scout, he'd easily have earned the merit badge for funeral planning. Everything was laid out in his wills, both living and final, including the details for disposal of his remains. He'd preferred cremation to burial. The thought of spending the rest of eternity in the cold, dark ground had held little attraction for him. He had been a bit claustrophobic, which explained his need to be out conquering the wide open spaces all the damn time. So in true Boy Scout fashion, Aaron had chosen the crematorium, prepaid for their services. They had one of those forever stamp kind of deals. And he'd even chosen the urn into which he wanted to be poured. It was a platinum affair, intricately embossed with a Celtic design that wound its way around the urn's circumference like an errant breeze. And sitting beside the large urn was an exact replica of the first urn in miniature, which contained a single serving of Aaron's ashes. That would fit nicely in my purse, I mused silently, eyeing the tiny urn. I could just carry it around with me like a fun accessory. I found this thought strangely comforting, and I smiled to myself as I pictured the tiny urn keeping me company at breakfast or in the shower. We stood to sing the final hymn. Aaron had been a sucker for a good hymn. I missed his throaty baritone, which had ricocheted off the walls of this church on many a Sunday morning. And in my head, I could hear him even now singing like a man possessed. And then it was over, and we were filing down the aisle. How strange, I thought, that I'm walking down an aisle just a few weeks before my wedding, leaving behind the remnants of my one true love and facing a future without him. This was definitely not the walk I'd always dreamed of.
Oh, okay. Very good. Why do you think it took you, why do you think it took you so long to write the funeral scene?
You know, I think part of the reason I'm a humorist is because I really like to avoid the dark places in my head. And I found that as I dug deeper and deeper, I had to get more emotional and allow the character to really feel her sadness. And I just hate sadness, you know? So it just, you know, I think I avoided it until finally I was like, oh, wait a minute, you know, he died and you didn't have a funeral for him. What is wrong with you? I mean, I really did say that to myself. What? You know, like I could have had a V8, you know, one of those kind of moments. But yeah, it's the digging down deep I think that's really difficult for any writer to get way down into that emotional place. You know, it's difficult because you're there a long time, you know.
Well, I assume you're living it.
Yeah.
Along with them living it.
Exactly.
And I guess you didn't think through the kicking the bucket while doing something on your bucket list. That was the funny thing. And then, now I have to really write about this. So
I just wanted it all to be funny. But obviously, you know, there are things that were not funny to her, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Appalachian Trail plays a big part in this book.
Yeah.
Have you hiked part of the Appalachian Trail?
I have not. I haven't. I did a bunch of hiking when I lived in California. There were so many mountains and trails, and I did a lot of hiking on the West Coast, but never the East Coast. But I had read a bunch of books about people hiking it, including Wild. That was the West Coast. But that kind of, when I read that book, which came out a few years before I started this, I just thought, wow, what an undertaking. And I did a bunch of research on the Appalachian Trail because, once again, this character told me that he did this. He was the one who said that he wanted to finish hiking it. And so I did a lot of research on it, and it came to be kind of real to me. I would like to do some sections of it. I can't imagine doing the entire thing. It's thousands of miles long.
Right.
Not that ambitious.
and there are, lots of after Wild came out, boy, that was a big thing for women to try to do, and
yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. We touched on research. You had to do some research, especially about the Appalachian Trail. Did you have to do any other, since you're a wedding planner too, did you have to do any other research for the book, or?
Really no, because by that point I'd been a wedding planner by the time I wrote this, for about 10, 11 years.
Okay.
And so the only research I did was going back through my journals and picking out which weddings I was going to describe, because literally there were hundreds of them. And I tried to, in here, do a mix of amusing weddings, because there were some funny moments, and then there were some sad ones. And but brides get crazy, and the people around them get crazy. And so that felt like the weddings felt almost like another character in the book to me, to make it more real for her, what she was going through.
The whole point about doing the weddings, and you say you kept journals for all those. Are you a journaling kind of person? Do you write in a journal every day, or is this just something for your job you did so that if you encountered something similar, you could go back and, how did I deal with that? Or
yeah, I've tried to keep a journal every day. I'm afraid I'm not that disciplined, I must admit. I do write every day, though. When I'm working on a project, I write 2 hours a day, no matter what. I find 2 hours. And even if I'm home at 11 at night, I will write till 1 in the morning. Because when I'm on a project, I'm dedicated to it. But when these weddings happened, I always wrote them down because I knew I would never remember the minute details. And at that point, I was doing it for myself because I just thought someday this is going to be something. And I want to remember what it was like. You know, as a songwriter and as a novelist, I tuck things away all the time. Things that I say, little tidbits of conversation that I hear in my head that I don't know what character this is, who is this? But I always write those down. And I have a file on my computer that is called Bits and Pieces. And every time I get something, it just goes in that folder. And then later when I'm working, I'll go through and go, oh yeah, I wrote that. Or, you know, actually the opening line for this book, I'm in the wrong life and I don't know how I got here, was a line I had 10 years before I wrote this book. And I just knew it was going to be an opening line for a novel. I didn't know which novel. I didn't know, because right now I'm working on 4 novels. So I didn't know which one it was going to be, but then it was her. And so it's just, and as a songwriter, you know, usually you'll start with a title and maybe a title and a melody will come together, or the first lines of something will come. But titles are were always really big for me as a songwriter. And it's interesting because I've been a professional songwriter for 30 years and I'm still doing that. And those are 3-minute stories. Got to put a lot of furniture in the room, as they say in songwriting lingo. And every word has to count. And when I started writing prose, it was like, oh my God, I get to use all the words and I get to go for 300 pages instead of just 3 minutes. So it's really, really fun. But that habit has remained with me to, you know, to have catchphrases and snippets and things like that that eventually find their way, you know, into a book.
For songwriting, so you came up with titles first. I find that interesting. I don't know. I guess I would think of like an event or a theme would be more my, I don't know. I'm not a songwriter nor a novelist, right. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And they often say that first line in a book is the hook, whether or not people will continue to read.
Right.
But I have to say, I do give myself at least 100 pages. If I'm not into a book, I will give it 100 pages and then I will put it down. I never used to do that. I would plow through to the end, but then half the time I would get to the end and think that really was a waste of my time. So, right. You know, give it 100 pages. But in the other 4 books that you're working on, which I can't imagine how full your plate is right now, did you have similar to this book where characters kind of talk to you and this is their story? And then how'd you come up with the first line for those books, I guess?
Yeah, I actually, I'm sort of working on the outlines of those books, and I don't really do an outline per se, but it's kind of like if you had a dream and you got up and wrote about it and you were trying to recreate it, but it was just more of a feeling. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm working on another book called The Ithaca Trading Company. And it was based on a memory of mine of the most perfect night of my life with a man I was with for one night, never saw again. And anytime I'm nervous or anxious, I remember this night. It was the most perfect night ever of my life, and it calms me down. And that was, gosh, 30 years ago. And so this book, in that memory informed this entire book and the title, because I was in Ithaca and I did meet this guy at a place called the Ithaca Trading Company. And now it's expanded into this whole other thing, and it has all these different meanings. But so when novels come to me, I also am working on a Civil War novel about prostitution in Nashville because it was legal during the Civil War. The whole Union Army, they took over Nashville very early in the war. And because the Army, half of them got the clap in the first month, they legalized prostitution just in Nashville. So I thought that would be a really interesting thing. And that whole thing downloaded like a movie in my head, all the characters and everything. So it seems like when I sort of open a door and then they come rushing in, like they're waiting for me to open the door for them. It's such an ethereal kind of a process. And then little by little, I just start, you know, finding a way to incorporate everything. Now, the Ithaca Trading Company does start with that memory, does start with it. And you just don't know if it's a dream or if it happened, and then it comes into the present. And so it's just really, it's such, I don't know if I'm making any sense, but it's like a feeling. You know, it starts with a feeling and then works its way through. But more often than not, I wait for the characters and they inform me what's going on. And in some novels, actually in every novel, characters have come in that I just briefly mention, and they'll go, "Hey, I'm in this book." I'm like, "What?" "Yeah, I'm in this book and I do this." And it's usually a man, gotta say. Pushing his way in the door. But then I killed him off. What did I tell you? It's becoming a theme. I don't know why.
That's your shtick, I guess, right? That's what you do.
Yeah, but it's always a funny death. So, you know.
It doesn't seem like they come through a door to you. It sounds like they open the floodgates and you are just, I mean, they're at you. Do you get to sleep at all? It sounds like they're in there constantly.
Yeah, and there are times though when they'll start badgering me. Like if I haven't written about these particular characters in a few days, they'll come into my head and I'll have to say, all right, here I go. And I'll go sit at the computer and work on that. Yeah. So
speaking of characters, coming up with names for characters, do they come with you with their own name, or are you like, I think that would make a good Harper, or that would make a good Julia?
So sometimes they do come with their names. Julia came with hers, but Harper did not. But Harper Lee is my favorite author. To Kill a Mockingbird, favorite book of all time. It's the most perfect book ever written, in my opinion. And so I wanted this character. She's a Chinese Southern belle, which I thought was hilarious. And she was an adopted baby from China that's raised by these wealthy people in a part of Nashville called Belle Meade, which is where the very, very wealthy people live. And so I named her Harper after Harper Lee. And then the other characters, they did not tell me who they were, except for Lincoln Douglas. He told me his name, and I thought that was hilarious. So I
was going to ask about Lincoln Douglas.
Yeah. He told me, and I thought that was hilarious. And then there are names that I always have liked that I kind of have in my back pocket, and I see if they fit the character. You know. So
Aaron DeMint.
Yeah. He told me his name was Aaron, but I came up with DeMint on my own because it had a real sort of a melody to it.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. I always wonder how authors decide on people's names, for sure.
Yeah. For my Civil War novel, I actually went and looked up, researched names that were popular in the 1800s, and so named characters that way. But these characters, I pulled names up, for them, except for Julia and Aaron and Link. But the other characters, I just kind of said, "What's your name?" And sometimes I try to listen. If they don't tell me, I say, "Well, I'm naming you," So
I think that would be fun to name them. I don't know.
It is. It's one of the most fun parts, actually. It's like getting to dress a baby or something.
Or when you get a dog or a cat. I mean,
exactly.
you get to name that.
You get to name them, yeah.
Not to compare your characters with animals, but
I get the cat. So yes.
In your book too, there are these rules.
Yes.
You'll break up a chapter by saying rule number 12, and then you'll have an italics sentence or two.
Right.
Talk to us about that.
Okay. So that was sort of a way to get her to give advice without being preachy and without actually having her tell other characters, you should do this or you should do that. And, I had a few different things to I like for my writing to have a lot of levels to it. So it's not just one story, but going back and forth in time, and the rules informed that, and other things just, give it a lot of dimension. And I thought those were also funny, and they were the things she was sort of learning along the way. And I purposely did not number them in order, because you don't learn the rules of life in order. They come in here and there, and they may come back again. And so that was something that she started informing me of. And then I took it a little farther.
Yes, I thought that was a real, an interesting way to infuse some of that into the chapters too. And I like that they were not in order. It's like you say, life does not come at you in order.
And I'll tell you an interesting story. When I had been working on this book forever by the time I got it published, and the editor I worked with, the first draft of the new changes, she put them in order, and I thought I was going to lose it. And I called the senior editor and I said, these can't be in order. That's not, purposely. And I just couldn't understand why she would change such a major thing. And I changed it back. But it was a very interesting process working with the editor, I have to say.
Okay, that brings up another question I have then. How hard is that to get your way when you're dealing with an editor? Because I've read and heard that sometimes, oh, no, you have to go with their changes or they're not going to take your book.
Right. I actually, in my contract, specified that I would have final say on all the edits, because that was really important to me. When you spend, I spent 2.5 years writing this before the year that it took to re-edit. Once you sign with the publisher, it's a year to a year and a half of more work, and you do at least 4 or 5 more edits completely. And so there were some, and then she also took out some of my jokes, which also set my hair on fire. And so I put them back in. But, she was really great with grammar, punctuation I didn't really know about. So she had the Chicago style manual down, which is where my education is not as good as hers. So things like that were really great. And she did help me a little bit with the flow of certain things. But to tell you the truth, before I ever shopped this, I had belonged to a women's writers group, and there's an editor there who was the editor for the Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood. And so I hired her to edit before I ever shopped the book.
So she's in your book club?
She's in my women's writers group.
Right, writers group.
Yeah. And she cut 45 pages out of the first manuscript. And it showed me things like I was saying the same thing 3 different ways in a paragraph. And things like that you just don't see. She was a great editor, and I loved her. So after working with her and then going to this other editor that was taking out my jokes and rearranging the rules, I was a little, I was stronger, let's say. And I really knew how I wanted the book to flow. And it was really important to me that it moved quickly.
Right.
I wanted it to be like a movie where the action just keeps going. And that cutting 45 pages out definitely moved it along a lot faster, I have to say. So it was an interesting process.
I have a lot of questions. I didn't know if anybody else, pop in if you guys have questions, but I've got a slew. So I don't know if you want me to just keep going, because I will, but if anybody has questions, pop in and ask. So I'm wondering, and after hearing about your characters, does writing exhaust you or energize you?
It energizes me.
Okay.
It really does. I just love it so much. And even if it is late at night, I actually am a night owl. So I want you all to know how special it is that I am here with makeup on this morning.
Yeah, because she's an hour before us too.
Yes, so. Yes. So, but yeah, I just get so energized when I write. And I actually, I set myself 2 hours a day minimum to write. And, my saying about work is ass plus chair equals inspiration. If you don't sit down in front of the computer, you're not going to do anything that day. And the characters aren't going to come into your head, and they're not going to talk to you. And sometimes I'll write 3 sentences and I'll just keep trying. Sometimes it'll just, it'll explode. And and I'm one of those writers also that writes in a linear fashion. I write from beginning to end. I don't pop in the first chapter and then go to the chapter 10 and then come back and forth. Once it's written, then I do go in and out a little, but I am also finding out the story as I go along. I know how where it's going to go at the end, but I don't know how it's really going to get there. And so little by little, it's like I'm reading it for the first time as I'm writing it. And so for me, that first couple drafts is pretty much in order. More than you asked. That was more answers to more
questions. That's okay. I love that. That's great. So how hard is it to write characters of the opposite sex? Now for you, again, you say these characters come to you, but
yeah.
Is it difficult for you? Was it difficult for you to write, you know, about Link or Aaron? I mean, to get in their shoes, get in their head.
You know, I inform some of it with men that I've known, and I'm very lucky. I have a lot of really good men friends that have never been romantic. So they've told me a lot of stuff when they're going through their romantic problems or whatever. But that has never really been difficult for me.
That's interesting too, I think.
Yeah. I love men. So I you know, I like to know what makes people tick. That's my big thing. Like, be careful if you talk to me, because something you say may end up in a book. That's why they're all on mute. They don't want to.
Let's see. So we know the hardest scene to write was the funeral scene. What's your favorite scene in the book?
Oh, wow. I would say really the chapter before the end is my favorite. When she has, I don't know if everyone's read it, but I will say, yeah, the end, that last one. I just love that. I also love the chapter when she I love, there's a UPS driver that comes in. She goes on a shopping spree, a big shopping spree for a while.
Huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And for someone who hates shopping, she really gets into it. And she is feeling so isolated, and she befriends this crazy UPS driver. And then her family comes to confront her, and the UPS driver gets caught in the middle of their family fight. And it's very uncomfortable for the UPS driver, who keeps trying to leave. And, you know, Julia keeps saying, this is my best friend, and you can tell her anything in front of, you know, she doesn't even know her last name, but she's just occupied her. So that was another character that kind of just materialized in the middle of writing it. And I loved her. So
that was a really fun, that was a funny time in the book for sure.
Yeah.
Especially during COVID, because I think a lot of people did that. And maybe, yeah, got to be, you know, on a first name basis with their delivery.
The UPS driver. Yeah.
So this is kind of two questions in one. Who do you read? And what is on a book I always wanted to read but haven't list?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I read a lot of romantic comedies. JoJo Moyes, I absolutely love her. I love Nora Ephron as an essayist and her screenplays. Catherine Higgins, love her. And a book I've been dying to read but haven't is probably, I can't even think of the name of it. There's a bird in the title, the yellow. Oh, I can't think of it.
That's okay. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay. It'll come back to me. It was just recently made into a movie, and it's like 800 pages long. Takes forever to read. Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
I'm sure somebody could Google it right now, and you can let us know.
Maybe the Goldfinch?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The Goldfinch.
The Goldfinch.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I actually have a copy of it that I have never cracked open. Now, I've never had the time to really like finish it. And to tell you the truth, until last year, I was doing this book review column. So I was reading 10 books a month. And I completely, just all the books that came out that I wanted to read, I didn't get to read. And So I also love Jennifer Weiner. I think she's great.
Mm-hmm.
She's a humorist. I like humorous romantic comedies. I'm afraid I'm a little stuck in that.
No, it doesn't sound like it. I mean, in fact, what you're writing about, I mean, you're really stretching yourself to go in different genres. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
How about your favorite childhood book?
Oh, wow. Madeline, all the Madeline books. Loved those. Absolutely loved those. Curious George was another one because he always got in trouble. And I didn't.
Live vicariously.
Yeah, he always got in trouble. I didn't. So I like to read about people that are doing things I don't do. Like climbing the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, there you go. Were you a big reader as a child?
I was. I read all the time. Yeah. And I actually, my mother was an editor. So I grew up around books, and I did a lot of writing as a girl. Lots of stories and that kind of thing. I never really wrote a novel or anything when I was little, but it's so funny to me that I started out really as a writer. Then I wanted to be an actress. I did that for a really long time. As a matter of fact, I graduated high school a semester early and went to New York to live. And I became an apprentice at Circle in the Square Theater before I decided to go off and do the opera thing. So, and then I was a musician for a long, long time. And then I came back to be a writer. And it feels like from the very beginning, that's what I should have done all the way along. But
no, you needed those experiences to get where you are today. Oh, you froze. That's too bad. Let's see. Can you hear us, Rachel? Okay. Gotta love technology, girls, right? And guys. Well, it looks like we may have cut this short. Did any of you guys have questions?
You're very good at asking them, Kate.
Oh, well, thanks. Thank you. I have the time, I'm like looking down at my notes, but.
Oh, we're back.
Oh, yeah, you're back. Are you back?
Yes.
Yay. You
Yay.
froze.
I was just about to call you and say, should we start again? Okay. I don't even know where I was, but whatever.
I forget too. I was childhood book. No, we did that. Oh, you needed to go through all of that.
Right. I need to go through all of that
point.
to get to this. Yes.
Yeah. I often think, when you turn around and look at your life, you know that it's a connect the dots, and it's not a straight line at all. And there's you have to go through that. That's our path.
Exactly. And you just never know where you're going to end up, But now I feel like this is what I always should have been doing. And it's what I'll always continue to do because I just love it so much. And the more I do it, the more I love it.
I do want to ask, and if this is too personal, just say so. But your dedication, I always read the dedication in most books. I'm sure everybody does, but I always wonder about that too. And I'm assuming, is this to your mom?
Yeah, to my mom. Yeah. So another thing, a vehicle that I used in the book was dream sequences, where Julia has all these dreams of Aaron. And I did that for a couple of reasons. First of all, because I wanted the audience to get to know him. And that seemed like, rather than just doing flashbacks of him, to actually have her be in dreams with him would give sort of a feeling of him being alive and get to know his personality a little bit more. But also, my mother passed away 10 years ago, and then my brother died the year after. And they came to me in dreams. And a lot of these dreams are dreams I had of them that I refashioned in the book. And I didn't really realize in the beginning, when I was writing this, that this was my way of dealing with their deaths and coming to terms with it. And so that was another reason it was really hard for me to go deep with all of that, because I missed them so terribly. And she was my best friend. I loved her so much. And she never got to see this book happen. And she saw the beginnings of the other novel and actually did some editing for me. And that was really fun. And I knew she always believed in me. And, you know, when I signed my book deal, I picked up the phone actually to call her. Even all these years later, I still do that. If something really exciting happens or something horrible, I pick up the phone before I realize, oh, wait a minute, can't do that. But there is a dream where she actually does talk on the phone to Aaron, and that was a dream I had of my brother, where we were talking on the phone, and I woke up and I went, oh my God, I just talked to him on the phone. I truly believe that there's not that much separation between the worlds. So that was my dedication to her, because more than anything, I wish that she was alive to see this all happen.
Oh, well, I'm truly sorry about your mom and your brother.
Thanks.
I think we all have, you know, a certain amount of that in our lives. And again, it makes us who we are. It's part of our story.
Right.
And makeup. And here you are, you know, dealing with editors now in a strong way. And that's her coming through to you saying, you can do this, Rachel, stand up.
Yeah, she's definitely, I feel like she's right there for me. You know, I feel like she's an energy that keeps me going, because she was such a good editor. She was such a good editor and a poet. So I almost feel like, I didn't go to school. I didn't get an English degree, but I did really, growing up, get an English degree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it is just about 11. And I wonder if anybody has any questions. Comments, exactly. Anything? Anybody?
I
haven't read the book, but now I want to read the book. So.
Oh, thank you. Good. I'm so glad. And if anybody else is, you know, a librarian, which I think a couple of you are, and
everybody.
If you all would like me to come do this for your library, I would love to do it. So,
perfect for book clubs.
Yes, absolutely. I'm really trying to get out there as much as I can. You know, and as you can tell, I'm just a terrible guest. I don't talk at all. And I'm very, very shy about sharing personal things about myself.
I do have one last question.
Sure.
Some authors hide like secrets in their book. And if you do, if you have done that, is that something that you do? Like a secret only maybe a few people will find or will see? And
you know what? I don't do that, but I'm going to do it in the next one. That's a great idea.
Well, I thought of it because I had seen somewhere that in every Disney movie there is a picture of Mickey Mouse. So even if it's just a circle with the 2 ears, it could be on the side of a horse, like it looks like it's spots, but they hide that, you know, subliminally in there. And Alfred Hitchcock also always appeared in his movies, you know, and you may not have noticed him, but I think that's kind of a cool thing. Anyway.
Yeah. It's a great idea.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for your time. And before we went live, Rachel and I chatted a bit. And as you guys know, most of you know, if you've come to the other 3 programs we've had, I have some prizes. And I asked Rachel to pick a few numbers for us. And I'm glad Jeanette's here. Jeanette, you're going to get a copy of the book, and it is signed by Miss Rachel.
Yay!
And we're very excited for you to get that. And then we have 2 gift cards, and the first is Target, and that goes to Kathleen. And then the second is an Amazon gift card, and that goes to Billy Joe. So I'm glad you guys came in. I like the fact that it was, you know, just a smaller, intimate group, because I think that's, especially when you're talking to an author, I think that's nice. I've attended a few of Macmillan's. They do like a happy half hour with an author, and I feel like I'm at a concert. It's not the same, you know. But I appreciate your time and loved your book, and I can't wait to see the rest of them.
Yes, me too. This was so much fun for me and so nice to see those of you I could see and to know that the rest of you were there. And like I said, if you'd like me to appear anywhere, my email is rachelgladstone@bellsouth.net, BELL south.net. So just say, you know, I saw you on the Zoom with Kate and I'd like to book you. And as you can see, I will get up at the crack of dawn to put on makeup and sit in front of my love sign here and talk to people because
Tell
love me.
tell about the love sign. Tell them about that.
The love sign was from a wedding I did. A groom made it, and it was their guest book. It was way up on a wall, and then all the guests, as they came in, stood underneath, and they took these mini Polaroids of them and clipped them on this chicken wire picture frame with little gold clothespins. And it was their guest book, and they were going to throw it out at the end. And I said, oh no, this is coming home with me. I have the perfect place for it. So I love to sit, that's my couch there, where I spend a lot of time and reading. And I sit under the love sign just to kind of bring it all in, you know.
I think that's a great story. And it looks so nice behind you too, especially when you're talking about a romantic comedy.
Right?
Book, right?
What else is there? Love, love, love. Gotta have it, as the Beatles said so many times. So thank you all for being here this morning. I appreciate it. Nice to see you all.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Next Wednesday, Amy Hammerill, Detroit Hustle. That's her book. And now that's a nonfic. So that'll be a little bit different for us, but I'm excited about it. So yeah, so thanks again, Rachel, for your time. Thanks everybody for being here. Hope to see you next Wednesday, same time, same Zoom channel. Bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.